Hello guys, Jerry speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM episode number 943, and today we're reacting to Find the Real DW, Find DW, the 12th episode. React to this beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwimmer, and this is a podcast about my journey to meet 7 male strangers who all have one thing in common with me. We all played the voice of DW, the little sister character on the popular kids show, Arthur.
Okay. Makes sense.
Hi, I'm DW, and this is gonna be the best show you've ever seen. You know why? Because Arthur's letting me do the show opener. Cut!
That's me, in an episode called What's Cooking? An episode where celebrity chef Ming Tsai comes to Lakewood Elementary School to judge a cooking contest for the kids. The episode aired in May 2006. Last week, I spoke with Mark Brown, the illustrator, author, and creator of the Arthur books and television series. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to make a podcast about Arthur without at least trying to interview him for it. And I'm so glad he agreed to talk to me. He's just one of those people where it's crazy to think about how much his creativity and point of view has changed the world. He taught generations of people that believing in themselves is the place to start. I've already found and interviewed the other male voice actors who play DW, and, as I mentioned, Mark...
I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Let's continue on.
So, why is my microphone still on? In the last episode, I confirmed that Mark Brown created DW based on a combination of his 3 younger sisters, and I decided that the only way to really conclude this story is to find at least one of the people that DW is based on. But first...
The similarities that I have as Danny to Buster, like he's a huge sci-fi fan, I'm a huge sci-fi fan, he's from a single-parent family, I grew up with a single mom. He has asthma, I have asthma. I don't know where, like, the lines are so blurred right now. I don't know what came first.
That's Danny Brochu, who plays Buster Baxter on Arthur. Here's a clip.
Buster, can you read me?
Roger, Arthur, but this walkie-talkie is giving me trouble.
He studied acting for theater, and when he graduated, he quickly started voice acting.
I started getting a lot of work because I was one of the adults that can do kids' voices. And so I was like a hot commodity when I was like 22 or 23 years old. And so I remember landing the main role of this anime. It was like 26 half-hour episodes of this Huckleberry Finn anime.
He got a ton of work in voice acting, as well as some on-screen acting in shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark? So do you remember what it was like auditioning for Arthur?
My God, it was such a funny. It's a great story, actually. I used to live by myself in an area of Montreal called the Plateau, and I remember one morning I left my apartment, literally, Jason, in my pajamas, to walk to the corner dépanneur where you would receive packages. And I started walking down the street, and I ran into this man, Andy Grin, one of the casting directors for Sinar at that point. And he was like, I have this project, and it's just starting, and they're doing all these castings in Montreal. Do you do a young person's voice? And he kind of knew that I did, and I was like, yeah, I do young boys' voices. And he was like, okay, so come to my house, and I'll record you. And he had like one of those, like, honestly, literally one of those, like, those old tape decks where you press record and play on with a friggin' cassette. And he recorded me, and I recorded the script, and there was no callback, no nothing. I got the role. And I was like, great. And it turned out to be Arthur. And I was just like 25 years later, still doing, it's like, it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have been different for you too, because when I started, it was at the very beginning, so we had no idea what it was. But when you got on board, it was already a well-established entity.
Yeah, like I grew up reading the books and loving the show.
Yeah, so having that extra kind of added pressure of working on something that you knew was already popular is
Yes.
different than, you know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Like, I definitely, I don't think I made those connections. You know, I think it's sort of the brashness or the confidence that comes from being a kid. I was just like, I cannot believe that I'm DW. Like, this is wild, but I'm going to do my
Wow.
best. I mean, did you feel any sort of pressure or a shift as the show got more popular?
Never. I always benefited from it being popular. You know, like people recognizing it. Even now, you know, I wear an Arthur sweatshirt in public, and people identify this sweat, and they're like, "Oh, did you work on that show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been doing the voice of Buster Baxter," and you know, it's amazing because it's the parents who grew up at the show, and
Right.
now it's been on the air for so long, their kids are now watching it.
Wow.
So it's like a whole new generation of kids being introduced to it, you know, and
Wow.
Arthur memes are out now. Like my kids have, my own kids have grown up watching the show.
I asked him if, despite being known for playing Buster, if he's ever had doubts about succeeding in his career as an actor.
Of course, all the time. I still do. I'm married to a woman who's also an actress, and so you know
Wow.
we go through phases of no work, you know, and we have a house and we have kids, and you know we're in our 50s now, and
Whoa.
yeah, we're still working contract to contract.
Whoa. Hang on. Danny, somebody, let me check how year he was born. And no, I'm not turning up the volume on while I was watching. That's a big no-no. So, Danny, what's his last name again? Rajo. He was 42. Wow. I mean, it was 16 when I was when it first aired. I mean, he was 15 when I was born, you know? Continue on.
That. So there's always a fear of, you know, not having enough work. But I don't know, you know, I have a lucky star on my shoulder or whatever. You know, I've only, and my wife as well, since the 90s,
Wow.
our sole work has come from in the business, working from the business, not anything else.
Right. Did you have a backup plan?
Yeah, there was. I mean, not just recently, like not even that long ago. I remember filling out an application for. I was going to be a postman. I was like, that's a perfect job. You know, you get to walk around, you get to talk to people. I remember. This is right before COVID. There was a couple of months there where I was like, you know what, I have to find something else to do because the work is.
Yeah, I saw it from Julie Woodruff, and it was crazy, you know? Continue on.
Coming in, and then I ended up getting acting work, and so I ended up just going back to, you know, working on either a dubbing series or working on a film or whatever. I still think I'd be a great postman.
I can't imagine what it felt like being Buster for over 20 years. Did Danny ever feel restless? Did he ever consider leaving the show?
In 1997, I decided that I was just going to take a year off and travel to Australia by myself. And the producers came up to me and said, so what do we do? And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, you want to replace me, you can replace me. Like, at that point, I didn't care. For some reason, I was just like dead set on traveling. And I think it was like the 5th season or something. And I was like, you guys do what you have to do. I'm traveling to Australia for a year. And if you want to replace me, then that's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, talk about brash, 27-year-old, you know, wanting to travel and giving up his. Anyway, it was a crazy decision. But it ended up working in my favor because the producers were like, we don't want to lose you. So we're going to write it into the show that you travel with your dad. And like I said, he was from a single-parent family. And so they introduced the father character who's a pilot and traveling around with this band. And they were like, you know, we'll write you out of the show. And they were so brilliant about it because what ended up happening was they came up with this whole storyline about how it feels for someone to lose their best friend.
Yeah.
Arthur had to deal with missing Buster, and Buster, recording these postcards
Mm.
from his travels and sending them back home. And so I remember recording a few episodes in Australia. And one of my favorite episodes of Arthur in general over the past 25 years is, Arthur worrying about, has Buster changed? He spent a year traveling. When he comes home, is he going to be different? Am I going to be different? Are we still going to be friends? And so there's this whole thing that only happened because I decided that I was going to travel for a year.
Yeah.
And when I got back, I started up the show again and realized that there was also another project in the works called.
Hang on, let me check. Oh, hang on, I got it. Never mind. Continue on.
Postcards from Buster, where they were going to do a whole spin-off where Buster's traveling with his father with this band and sending postcards back to his friends.
Since Danny was working on Arthur since the very beginning, did he have any sort of relationship with the books or with Mark Brown?
Yeah, no, I didn't really have a relationship with him before the show. I hadn't read the books. I didn't grow up with the books or anything beforehand, but I did get to meet him. I think in the first season, he came to studio a couple of times. I remember he signed a Buster doll for me.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
And then we would just kind of record the show, and he went about his life. And the only other time that I really met him was with his son when we had a huge rap party, like a huge cast party, a few years ago to kind of say goodbye to the series, and had a really nice conversation with him and his son. And yeah, I mean, such a gentle man. I don't know him that well, but obviously, the godfather of gentle. Always a smile on his face, and always very generous with his time and stuff. But I think he was also blown away by the popularity of the cartoon.
Wow.
Yeah. And speaking of Mark Brown, after I spoke with him, he introduced me to his sister, Bonnie Walmsley.
Well, I was a kindergarten teacher, so when people found out Mark was my brother and the kids found out that he wrote and illustrated the books, I had rock star status.
Did you ever tell the kids that your fun fact and your relationship to the stories?
Oh yes, yeah. That was. I think it's a concept that's a little tricky for 5-year-olds to understand that a character is based on you.
Yeah.
But, they knew that, and I told them that Grandma Thora was our real grandma, and that was her name, and so I would explain to them that the characters were based on people in Mark's real life.
And did you do it in voices? Like, can you do the DW voice?
Absolutely not. That's your job, Jason. Well, let me hear yours.
Oh, when I do it, it sounds like this. It's like, Arthur, why is this? Like, I can't do it, but that's what I used to do. Did Bonnie think Mark was going to succeed when he was trying to make it as an author and illustrator?
Absolutely, yes. He was just so talented, even as a child, and always, no matter what it was, he was expressing his creativity, and he was just doing everything he could to get started. But it didn't really take him that long.
Yeah.
Relatively young when he started the Arthur books. He just has so much creativity. It really is incredible. He never stops. Just everything he does, whether it's gardening or restoring old homes or, collecting primitive antiques. I mean, there's nothing around him that isn't visually, aesthetically pleasing. It's just his whole world, and he can't help himself.
We got to grow up with Arthur. What sort of stories and television, children's content did you guys grow up with?
Well, we grew up in the 50s, and television was really in its infancy, and we really didn't watch that much television. But, children's literature was in its infancy in a sense, too. It was really then in the 60s and 70s when children's literature became more prolific, and So we really didn't have lots of books in our homes, not the way my children did or my grandchildren do. But I do remember it was a huge deal to go to the public library. That was such fun. And it was a beautiful old building in downtown, and that was a big deal. And I did always enjoy that and taking the books home. But mostly, there weren't a huge amount of children's books. Things like The Little Engine That Could, and those old classics. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was an old one. A lot of fairy tales.
A lot of Breaking Bad special stuff, which I like. Well, which I'll get back to that, which is remember time when on the boring jokes and thing. Continue on.
Elves and the Shoemaker, and those were our vintage.
I think it's so great that there's this connection between their childhood and how important reading and going to the library was for the characters on Arthur.
Yeah.
Like with the library card song on Arthur.
Wow. Makes sense.
Or when DW gets her library card.
Now I know what true power feels like.
It feels special knowing that loving books and going to the library was so important to the Brown family. Did you watch the show a lot?
I watched it with my children
Mm-hmm.
when they were growing up, because it was, that's when it had started. I was teaching kindergarten at the time Mark started the television show. And it was a big deal. It was very exciting.
How did you feel the first time you read DW in the books and when you saw DW on the television show?
Well, most of Mark's characters are based on people in his life. And I guess I was flattered. He portrays us as a bit annoying at times, but it's always flattering to have a character based on you. And I think it was inevitable with three younger sisters. There's just so much material there that he couldn't help himself.
Has your idea about your relationship with the character changed over time, or have you sort of always felt just very flattered?
Well, I do realize it's fiction. And I also know that Mark does love me. But it's something to think about as a child, to treat your siblings well, because you never know what they will grow up to be, what they can do if they're clever, like Mark.
Yeah.
One thing you don't know is that I'm also the inspiration for Francine.
Wow. Wow.
Which
Interesting.
that I could tell you.
Yeah.
So Francine has her own little special qualities. I always was very much a tomboy and very, involved in athletics and sports. And Mark and I were good friends, and I think he and Francine are good friends, although she can be a little irritating at times. And so I was also all on my own, Francine.
So while DW is based on Bonnie and her two sisters, Francine is just based on her. Do you yourself identify more with DW or Francine?
Probably Francine.
It really has been so interesting to find out how each character in the Arthur universe is based on Mark's relationships with people in his real life. What was it like seeing DW on screen? Did you have a favorite moment, or was it like the kind of thing where you had to look away when DW was on the screen?
I just found it amusing. I think The Picky Eater is one of my favorite books and episodes. It just, kind of encapsulates her little attitude. I won't eat anything with eyes, and I don't know. I do remember Mark coming to speak to the kids at my school and at my children's school, and that was always a really important time. He would, in my classroom, he would draw the characters and talk to them and answer questions, and he's always been very gracious.
Yeah.
As far as signing books, he will sit there for hours and sign books when he does a talk until everybody gets a picture with him, and he's really a very generous and giving human being, besides being talented.
Talking about how you were your career as a kindergarten teacher. When I was in kindergarten and grade 1, we used to have this assignment for school where our teachers would had like a class, instead of like a class pet, we had a class Arthur doll and a class DW doll. And it was our responsibility to, everyone got a turn to take home the doll. And then we were told we had to do kind of like a book report where we wrote down all the activities we did with the Arthur or DW and then present them to the class. Did you do that in your class?
Well, actually, I wrote a book called Teaching with Favorite Mark Brown Books that Scholastic published. So, I did develop a lot of activities and lessons that related. The DW books were great to read to kindergartners because they certainly identified with her, and when she teaching, learning how to ride a bike and all those things that kindergartners do, going to the beach. She was afraid to go in the water, and
I just wanted to keep asking Bonnie questions about.
As I mentioned during bedtime stories episodes in the past, well, months ago, as I'm referring to it because it was, as Bonnie mentioned, I was these DW getting in the water. I was just like reading the book about it and said bedtime stories. Yeah, before I got canceled, I was gonna read DW swimming episode, a book thing on bedtime stories episode one time. Continue on.
To understand more about her character. Then she told me,
so you probably know more about DW than I do. You lived it.
Which was confusing. Here I thought speaking with Bonnie would almost be like speaking with the real life DW. I did get a confident vibe from speaking with her, a quality I definitely see in the DW character. But when she said I lived it, I realized that even though DW is inspired by her life, Bonnie sees someone like me, who played the voice of DW, as having more ownership over the role than her. I realized that I'd been projecting ownership of DW the character onto her, and I see a sort of reluctance to claim DW as part of my identity in that. Maybe that has something to do with the degree of separation I feel from DW, because in playing her, I was only using my voice. Like, maybe if it was an on-screen performance, I would feel more connected to her, or something like that. As our conversation started wrapping up, I asked Bonnie, do you have any a message for maybe someone who listens who either is a DW or knows a DW in real life?
Well, I think there's a lot of them out there. I hope there are.
I hope so too.
I just think one thing Mark did was showcase strong female characters, from Grandma Thora to, Francine.
Yeah.
DW, Muffy.
Yeah.
There were none that didn't have a little attitude. And I think that's what he saw in his life.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
My grandmother was very strong and independent. My mom was, in a very quiet way. She was, very determined and strong woman. And then 3 younger sisters. You just have to have a whole new respect.
Returning to Danny, Buster is actually based on his best friend from grade 3. And I'm wondering if you ever had the chance to meet or know of Mr. Terry Johnson, who is actually coincidentally does live in Australia.
Wow, that's amazing. No, that's the first time I'm hearing of this person. Terry Johnson. Yeah, I didn't know that at all. We never had that conversation.
Yeah, he lives in Australia, where he and his wife have a restaurant and a bed and breakfast.
Wow.
Wow.
If I ever revisit Australia, I'd love to look him up and just say, hey, buddy.
Yeah. I'm based on the 8-year-old version of you, but also as a rabbit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so funny. And I think that says a lot about Mark too. Like he made things as simple as possible. I don't think he ventured like so far from his life, and that's what makes that's what makes the stories, and I think the cartoon too very. The reason why it's still popular is I think it's all sincerity. It's all real.
Yeah.
In a way, it's based in a fabricated town, and obviously all the characters are animals and stuff, but it's all based on real stuff, real relationships, real dilemmas that kids have with each other and with their teachers, and so I think that's what's kept it pretty present in everyone's life.
It
Wow.
seems like Arthur is ending, or that the future of the series is, maybe they'll be moving to a digital platform. And I'm wondering, and I set out to talk to and interview all the other DWs, and I've done that, and now I'm sort of at the tail end of that project, and I'm wondering how you feel, if you have any advice for me in terms of how I can really let go of what I'm doing, give back to the show and Arthur, and really just move on in a healthy way.
I don't know why you would want to move on. It's a beautiful place to be. um, and there's still so many people to interview. I think personally, this project of yours shouldn't end anytime soon.
Exactly.
Because it's right at the tail end of the ending, which I think is going to garner a lot of attention. And so now, probably more than even 10 years ago, Arthur's going to be it's going to be more in the public eye, I think, than it was before, because people are realizing that it's ending, and it is an end of a generation. It's an end of an era.
Yes.
And it's as relevant as the show is as relevant as it ever was.
Like it was months ago. Continue on.
Even with all its different incarnations and stuff. So I don't think it's a project that you should search to give up on. I think it's something. It's a very brave and courageous and valued project. I think, especially now at the end of it, where everyone's going to be wanting to talk about it. So why not just continue with the interviews and continue with the connection to it.
Exactly.
Continue doing it. I think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I think that I didn't set out to do this, but the more I work on it, the more I feel like I really just want to give something back to the show, Arthur, because it's given me so much, and I just want to show my respect.
Yeah, and it's also a love letter to the how I don't know, just the simple message that Arthur always had, right? Just get along and appreciate others for their differences, which I think at this day and age, it's something we all still need to hear.
Those were my conversations with Danny Brochu, the voice of Buster Baxter, and Bonnie Walmsley, one of Mark Brown's 3 sisters, who inspired him to create DW. Speaking to Danny was a reminder of how special it was that we got to participate in this television show that touched so many people's lives. It was amazing to hear his story and to talk to him about the person he's grown up to be while playing a character inspired by Mark Brown's childhood best friend. Plus, Danny reminded me of how this podcast might be seen as a way of paying my respect to Arthur and to Mark Brown, who have given me so much. So, thank you for talking to me, Danny. When I found out DW was based on Mark Brown's sisters, I didn't know what to expect, but it was amazing to be able to talk to Bonnie. It was fascinating to hear more about how Mark Brown grew up, how he has always been inexorable with his creativity, and how much the public library meant to their family. Probably the most DW thing about her was how little it seemed to faze her that DW, this sometimes annoying, sometimes idolized character, is based on her. She's flattered, and like probably so many other teachers over the last 25 years, she used Arthur to help create material to teach in her kindergarten classroom. I hope I can channel some of Bonnie's coolness in my life. Thanks for letting me ask you all those questions about Mark and DW, Bonnie. I spent years talking about the idea to find all the voice actors who played DW. In October 2020, I finally started working on this podcast. And on June 29th, 2021, I decided to release my first episode. Since then, I've interviewed tons of amazing people and have listened to and edited countless hours of my own voice. I can really hear a difference in the way I approach some of the questions surrounding peaking and when I play DW, or what achievements or self-worth look like to myself. So here are 5 lessons I've learned while going through this experience. 1. The value of an achievement isn't based on how many people recognize it. It's about what the achievement means to you. 2. Just because something big happens in your life, it doesn't have to define you. You get to decide who you are to yourself. 3. Try to accept that you can't control how people will perceive you. So try not to worry too much about it and just be true to yourself.
Yes.
4. Be humble, but also be confident and proud of the person you are. Some people are genuinely interested in the things you've done in your life, and it's okay to not shy away from talking about yourself once in a while. 5. Believe in yourself. That's the place to start.
Exactly.
I made a point to ask each person who played DW about whether or not playing the part changed them, but over time, I stopped asking the question, because of course it did. Everything changes you, but it's up to all of us as individuals to decide what happens next, and weirdly enough, I think I needed to make this podcast in order to learn that for myself. So, that's the end of this podcast, or of season 1. I haven't decided. I've finished what I set out to do, but the truth is, I've learned that there's a much bigger story to tell here. I've spoken to more people than I've let you hear, and I don't think they entirely fit into the context of what finding DW means. Yet. But for now, I want to thank each person who took the time to speak with me. Without their involvement, this podcast wouldn't have been complete.
My name is Michael Callows, and I was the first person to play DW on Arthur.
So my name is Oliver Granger, and I was the second person to play DW on Arthur.
Hello, my name is Ryan Aaronworth, and I was the 3rd-and-a-half person to play DW on Arthur.
Hi, this is Robert Naylor, and I was the 4th actor to play the voice of DW on Arthur.
My name is Jake Beal, and I was the 5th person to play DW.
I'm Andrew Dayton, and I was the 6th person to play DW on Arthur.
My name is Christian DeStefano, and I was the 7th person to play DW.
Hi, my name is Ethan Bujoto, and I was the 8th
and potentially last person to play DW on Arthur.
My name is Jason Schwimmer, and I was the 3rd person to play the voice of DW on Arthur. I played the part from seasons 7 to 10, from 2002 to 2006. When I was the voice of DW, did I peak? No. Will I ever do anything more meaningful or significant? Yes. Thanks for listening. This podcast was made possible in part from contributions through Patreon from listeners like you. Thank you, Blendy, Quinton Reviews, Sam Brodaddy, and Alex.
So that was Finding DW episode 12. What do I think about this episode? I think it was amazing. So far this episode was a successful podcast to react. And that was LJPCBM episode number 933. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one's going to be $1 Million Sharks Season 2 Episode 3 from the 25K APR TV. Until next time, salute Jefferson Puppies of Baby. We can work with you guys pursue. Till Wednesday out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. I Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.